There's something about working the night shift that changes everything. The way shadows move, the way silence isn't really silent, the way you feel like you're not alone. Maybe it's just exhaustion playing tricks on your mind. Or maybe something is really there. This is a true story, or at least that's what the guy who told me swears. A security guard named Daniel, who took one last shift before quitting his job for good. But by the end of the night, he didn't just quit. He ran. Daniel worked security at an old office building downtown. Nothing fancy, just a skeleton crew of night workers, flickering fluorescent lights, and a whole lot of empty space. His job was simple: watch the cameras, patrol the halls, and make sure nothing went wrong. But on this particular night, something did. The moment Daniel stepped in, he felt it. The air was thick, heavy. It was the kind of feeling that made the hair on your arms stand up. He shook it off, blaming exhaustion. "It's just another boring shift," he muttered to himself. Little did he know it would be anything but. At around 2 a.m., Daniel was in the security office, flipping through the camera feeds. That's when he noticed something weird. The camera in hallway 3 had static interference. Not a big deal. It happened sometimes. But then, through the flickering screen, he saw something. A shadow. Not a normal shadow. This one moved. Slowly, like someone standing at the edge of the camera's range, swaying slightly. Daniel grabbed his flashlight and walked to hallway 3. It was empty, silent. The only sound was the soft hum of the vending machine at the end of the corridor. He sighed in relief. Probably just a glitch. But as he turned to leave, thump, a loud sound echoed from down the hallway. Daniel froze. It sounded like a door slamming shut. But all the offices were locked. He swallowed hard and moved forward, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. He checked each door, all locked, no signs of movement. Must have been my imagination, he told himself, but deep down, he knew something wasn't right. Daniel returned to the security office, his nerves slightly on edge. He switched back to the cameras, checking hallway 3 again. The shadow was gone. But now, it was in hallway 2, closer. He blinked. The screen flickered again. This time, he saw legs, just the lower half of a figure, standing motionless, just beyond the camera's frame. A chill ran down his spine. Daniel grabbed his radio. "Hey, is anyone still in the building?" he asked. Silence. Then, static. His heart pounded. Something was very, very wrong. Determined, Daniel left the office again. He wasn't scared, or at least, that's what he told himself. He walked down hallway 2, flashlight in hand. The silence was deafening. He turned a corner and stopped dead in his tracks. The door at the end of the hall was wide open. This was impossible. It was the supply closet, and it didn't even have a handle on the outside. Daniel's breath hitched. He stepped closer, peering inside. Nothing. Just shelves of cleaning supplies and darkness. But something felt off. The air inside was colder than the rest of the building. A bitter, freezing cold. Then he heard it. A whisper right behind him. A breath, cold against his ear. "You shouldn't be here." Daniel spun around, swinging his flashlight wildly. Nothing but the door. It slammed shut on its own. That was it. He bolted. Panting, Daniel ran back to the security office. He locked the door, hands shaking, and turned back to the cameras. The screen flickered violently. Hallway 2 was now completely black. No feed, just static. Then, one camera came back. The elevator feed. The doors were open, and inside was someone standing there, not moving, not blinking, just standing. Then, slowly, their head turned toward the camera. The feed cut to black. Daniel didn't wait. He grabbed his keys, left everything behind, and sprinted out of the building. He never came back. 2 weeks later, another guard took over the shift. He lasted one night, because whatever Daniel saw that night was still there. So the next time you work the night shift and you hear a strange noise or see a shadow that doesn't belong, maybe it's time to leave before it's too late. This is the story of Mark Holloway, a gas station clerk who took on one too many graveyard shifts. And trust me, he wouldn't live to regret it. Mark had worked at this gas station for almost a year. Same shift, same dull hours. He had seen the occasional drunk wander in, maybe a few strange characters, but nothing like what he was about to experience. It started around 1 a.m. The wind picked up, howling through the cracks in the old building. Rain pattered against the glass and thunder groaned in the distance. Then the lights flickered. Mark barely noticed at first. Power surges weren't unusual during storms. But then something caught his eye on the security monitor. A figure standing just outside, beneath the flickering streetlight. A man, tall and unmoving, was just standing there. He wasn't looking at the gas pumps or the store. He was looking directly into the camera, like he knew Mark was watching. And then the feed cut out. But when Mark looked outside, there was no one there. He told himself it was just a glitch. Maybe the rain was messing with the cameras. He went back to his phone, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Then came the tapping, soft, rhythmic, almost playful. His stomach twisted. The parking lot was still empty. The streetlight flickered. He took a deep breath and decided to check the cameras again. And that's when he saw it, a figure inside the store. But Mark was alone, or so he thought. His heart pounded. He wasn't imagining things. There was something in the store with him. Then a can fell, rolled slowly across the floor, and that's when he heard it. The whispering. It was coming from the back room, a voice, barely audible, calling his name. He should have run. He should have left right then and there, but curiosity, or maybe fear, pushed him forward. The storage room was empty, except for one thing: a security monitor, still playing the footage from earlier. Only now, the figure was inside, standing right behind him. By morning, Mark was gone. No sign of him anywhere. No struggle. No blood. Just his phone, left on the counter. The last thing it recorded was a picture of the security monitor, of a tall, dark figure with hollow, staring eyes. The night shift at St. Mary's Hospital was always quiet, almost unnaturally so. Erin, a young nurse, fresh out of school, had been working there for 2 months. She had heard rumors about strange occurrences, but she never paid them much attention. Hospitals were full of ghost stories, whispered between staff during late shifts to pass the time. That night, however, something felt different. The air was colder, heavier. As she walked past the nurse's station, she noticed her colleague, Margot, giving her a strange look before quickly turning away. Erin ignored it and continued with her rounds. But a chill ran down her spine when she saw the next name on her chart. Room 209. There was hum and about. Room 209. The number plaque was scratched and worn, unlike the others. As Erin pushed the door open, a wave of unease washed over her. The room was too dark. The overhead light didn't turn on, and only the dim glow from the hallway illuminated the space. The air felt thick, oppressive, making it difficult to breathe. The elderly patient, Mr. Reynolds, lay motionless in his bed. His heart monitor beeped steadily, the only sound in the suffocating silence. As Erin stepped closer to adjust his IV, a slow creaking sound echoed from the corner of the room. A rocking chair, moving back and forth on its own. She froze. The temperature in the room plummeted, and she could see her own breath in the air. Something wasn't right. A deep, suffocating presence filled the space, pressing down on her like an unseen weight. Then, without warning, the heart monitor flatlined. Panic surged through her as alarms blared. She rushed to initiate CPR, but as she pressed down on the patient's chest, it felt wrong, hollow, like there was nothing beneath her hands. The room seemed to close in on her, the shadows stretching unnaturally, as if something unseen was watching. And then the patient's eyes snapped open. They were black, empty. Erin stumbled backward, her pulse hammering in her ears. The rocking chair abruptly stopped moving. The air in the room grew still, deathly silent. Then, as suddenly as it had started, the chaos ended. The lights flickered back on, and the alarms ceased. Mr. Reynolds was gone. The bed was empty, the sheets undisturbed. It was as if he had never been there at all. Erin's hands trembled as she reached for the patient's chart. Her breath caught in her throat when she saw the last entry. Mr. Reynolds had been pronounced dead 3 days ago. A shiver crawled down her spine. The unease turned to pure dread as she turned toward the hallway. The call light for room 209 had turned on again. Her heart pounded as she backed away, but she couldn't look away from the eerie glow of the call button. The nurse's station was just ahead. She could call for help, ask someone to go with her, but as she took a step forward, the overhead intercom crackled to life. A garbled voice whispered something indecipherable. Then 2 words stood out clearly through the static. "Come back." Erin froze. The voice was distorted, but deep down she knew it belonged to Mr. Reynolds. The hospital suddenly felt suffocating, the air too thick to breathe. She turned on her heels and ran, pushing past the empty hallway and skidding into the nurse's station. But when she arrived, it was empty. Margot was gone. The entire floor was silent. A cold dread settled in her gut. The usual background noises of the hospital, distant conversations, beeping monitors, had vanished. It was as if the building itself had fallen into a void of silence. She reached for her phone, her fingers trembling. No service. The clock on the wall had stopped ticking. The second hand was frozen in place. She tried the landline. Dead. The fluorescent lights flickered again. Then, one by one, they began shutting off, the darkness spreading closer and closer to her. She grabbed a flashlight from the station drawer and flicked it on. The beam cut through the dark, but the batteries were already draining, the light dimming too fast. A noise echoed down the hall. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, but not normal footsteps. These sounded wet, like something dragging across the tiles. Erin turned the flashlight toward the sound. A shadow flickered at the end of the hallway. It was tall, unnaturally thin, and its limbs moved with a jerky, unnatural grace. The thing had no face, just a gaping, hollow void where its mouth should be. She stumbled backward, barely managing to hold in a scream. The emergency exit was just down the hall. If she could make it there, she could escape. But as she turned to run, she heard another sound. Breathing, not her own. It was coming from directly behind her. Erin spun around, but there was nothing there. The flashlight flickered, dimming further. A whisper slithered through the air, too close, brushing against her ear. "You shouldn't have come back." The lights went out completely. Darkness swallowed her whole. Night shifts, they weren't for the faint of heart, because sometimes the dead didn't stay dead. Have you ever experienced something terrifying while working at night? Tell us in the comments. And if you want more chilling stories, check out our next horror video. Stay safe and don't look behind you.